أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم ففهمنا سليمان وكلنا آتينا حكما وعلما رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم سبحانك لما وهنانيك ألم لا تنسني ولا تنسني الحمد لله أفضل الحمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله وسائر نبي والصالحين وسلم الموفقني واهدني وسددني واجمع لي بين الصواب والثواب وعذني من الخطأ والهرمان آمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another episode of Questions and Answers. I'm your host Amjad Muhammad, and I will be with you for the next 45 minutes or so, dealing with your questions, your queries and your curiosities. How do you go about trying to speak to me? Well, it's the usual method. 01274 214299. That's 01274 214299. Please do give us a call on that number. You'll come straight through to the studio, and Adil, my esteemed colleague, will patch you through, and you'll be heard on the speakers here in the studio, and I will be able to hear you in my earpiece as well as the studio, and inshallah I'll be able to deal with your query. We had a couple of questions yesterday. We look forward to more questions today. I did mention to you, obviously, that we don't have any questions left on the two Darul Iftar groups that I have, one for the ladies, one for the gents. Alhamdulillah, we managed to deal with all of the questions on Wednesday, and there's been none subsequent, so all is good, as they say, on the Western Front. Next is the emails. Well, we dealt with a number of emails that had come into the Q&A email account. What is the Q&A email account? It is q&a@iqra.tv. That's q&a@iqra.tv. So please do get your emails in or get your calls in on 01274 214299. We dealt with 3 emails yesterday. One was about the shaving of a baby's head. The other was about using zakat money for iftar. And the last question we dealt with before we went off air was, can I work for a glass bottle maker company that sells to beer companies? So let's look at the other question that we still have on that page of emails. I'm sure my esteemed colleague Adil is fishing through the bag of emails, and he will be pulling them out ready for more if we don't receive a call. So let me make that call again, 01274 214299. We do have plenty of time. We started obviously on time, and we have over a quarter of an hour still remaining before our break for Adhan, and then we will have pretty much nearly close to 20-25 minutes as well in the second session. So we have plenty of time today. So let's get all those shy people to pick up their phone and dial that number. Remember, this is a service that's been provided. Many of the time, people really struggle to have access to ulama. I get that told so many times by people, and I sort of raise an eyebrow and I shrug my shoulders and I say, well, I find that hard to believe. And they say, why? I said, well, I know that I have 2 channels on the a particular app which is open to anybody. They can join it and they can post questions on it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, apart from, well, when I say 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, apart from the weekend, because then the group is closed at 8 p.m. and reopened on Monday morning, just so that we're not inundated with messages coming in. And similarly, we have an email address, which is here, q&a@iqra.tv. And so those questions can come through, and we can also deal with them as well. So plenty of facilities, and also the number. So if people struggle with email, if they don't have an email address or they're not confident with typing something, then it's simple, ring. And you can ring in any language, well, apart from the languages I don't understand. So you can ring and speak in Urdu, you can ring, speak in Pashto, you can ring and speak in English. And inshallah, we'll be able to deal with your queries as best as we can, and also give it in the English language if it is not asked in the English language. So the next question on the list on this particular page, can I help build a mosque during menstruation? Okay, interesting question, because usually we find that specialists build mosques, experts, builders, contractors, electricians, gas engineers, plumbers, that sort of thing. Very rarely is it somebody who is a non-expert. So let's just say that a woman has qualified to be a builder and she's now building a masjid. Now, many people will get confused as to what a masjid is. If you recall, in the last discussion that I had a few weeks ago, I made it quite clear that the area which is considered as the masjid is the land. Okay, the land is what is considered as the masjid. So that particular piece of land, as soon as a people decide that this is going to be a masjid, so whether that is a person who owns the land already, and he or she says that this land is now I'm dedicating as waqf to be a masjid, immediately with that niyyah, it's now on its way to becoming and to be considered as a masjid. Or sometimes what can happen is the people can buy a piece of land, and at the time of purchase they say with the niyyah that we're going to make this into a masjid. So as soon as that niyyah is made, then that piece of land is a masjid. Doesn't matter if there's no carpet, doesn't matter if there's no walls, doesn't matter if there's no roof, doesn't matter if there's not even a fence. In fact, it does not matter even if there's trees still growing in it, and rubble, and grass, and animals, and anything else for that matter. That land is now a masjid, and a person who prays there will get 27 times the reward than they would do if they prayed at home. And also it is now binding upon the community to, unless there's delays due to building, to as soon as possible start to pray the 5 daily prayers from that area. So once that has been declared as a masjid, if now a woman is a builder, or she's a gas engineer or a plumber or something like that, she needs to now have access to that land. So the hukam of being in a state of purity is also applied there as well. So just because there's no there's no roof, there's no walls, there's nothing there, it does not matter. That building, that area is now a masjid, and because it is a masjid, then therefore anybody who walks into that area will be considered as though they are entering into a masjid, and the rules of the masjid will apply. So anybody who is in a state of janaba, ritual impurity, but a major ritual impurity, not a hadath of the extent that wudu can be moved, but that type of ritual impurity which can only be removed by ghusl. And obviously a woman cannot perform ritual ghusl, ritual bathing, until her ada of her haid has finished, the ada of her menstruation has finished, then she will perform the ritual ghusl. And when she performs that, she is now in a state of purity. She can now come into the masjid, even though, as I said, it is desolate, grass, walls, trees. You know, this is just a piece of land. Okay, so I hope that's been clear. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair for a very interesting question. My colleague has put up 2 other questions, one which is very timely for this time of the year, as we are on the 28th of October. Yes, we are, 28th of October, so we're a few days away from a particular event which takes place, particularly in Western countries. And also a question which is a little bit more practical, mundane, day-to-day question. Before I get to those questions, let me remind the viewers, Q&A, in case you're still wondering what you're watching. The number to call is 01274 214299. That's 01274 214299. Please do get your calls in, because now, following answering that question in great detail, we have half or just under half of the session remaining before we are going to take a break. And as you know, these questions do sometimes take some time to A, listen to, and B, then to respond. So please utilize that opportunity. If, on the other hand, you wish to email, like the questions that we have received in our email, then it is q&a@iqra.tv. So the next question that's come to us via email, on that particular email that I just shared with you, is, can you say Bismillah in the bathroom when taking off clothes? Now, whenever we do anything which is a ritual act, okay, anything which is a ritual act, like saying basmala, then we need to have some evidence for it. Did the Prophet ﷺ perform that? Because what we are saying is that one needs to do this, or one will be rewarded if they do this. Now, needs to do and rewarded are things of the unseen. And obviously, we cannot see the unseen. We can only see the unseen when we are notified by the Prophet ﷺ, who has been notified by Allah. And that either comes to us in Allah's word, which is the Quran, or it comes to us through Hadith Qudsi, which are the words of Allah, but paraphrased by the Prophet ﷺ in his own words. So the message is from Allah, but the words are the Prophet ﷺ. And then obviously Hadith, which are the words of the Prophet ﷺ. And the hukm on the Hadith, whether Qudsi or Sahih, Hasan, Da'if, this is due to the chain of narrators from the Prophet ﷺ to us. It is not, aliyadu billah, due to the fact that, the Prophet ﷺ said something weak there, he said something sahih there, he said something hasan there. No, may Allah, may we seek a refuge in Allah. That's not what is being said. Whenever we mention these words, da'if, hasan, sahih, we're talking about the isnad, the chain. Because we know everything the Prophet ﷺ said is fact. Okay, when it's regarding the deen. Anything which he expressed his opinion like a man, then that's a different thing altogether. And he mentioned that, look, I am a man. I will give my opinion on certain things, and you can either take my opinion or not take my opinion. So for instance, let me give you a good example. When the Prophet ﷺ was taking mashwara from his companions about how to defend Medina, when the coalition of the Arab tribes were marching towards Medina, and it is said that they were up to the figures of 10,000. So a coalition of this size had never been put together by the Arabs before this, because they were a very disparate bunch. They always fought with each other. So for them to come together, it was a rare thing. And they did, and they wanted to once and for all destroy the Prophet ﷺ and destroy the companions. So that once and for all, Islam would be wiped away from the face of the earth. But the Prophet ﷺ obviously wanted to stand and defend, so he took consultation from his companions. And his companions said, some said, why don't we stand our ground and use the city as our defense, so that there are trees behind us, there are lots and lots of date palm trees behind us, which act as a block, act as a deterrent for an army. There's mountains to the right and mountains to the left. Okay, so that can be a good defense. We will only take the army facing us. Other more younger companions said, nah, let's take the fight to the enemy. Why are we risking our wives? Why are we risking our children? Why are we risking our livelihood? Let's march out into the open and fight them in the open. So the Prophet ﷺ is listening to all, and he seems to be inclined towards marching out. And so a Sahabi asks that, is this revelation or may I give an opinion? He said, no, this is not, you can express an opinion. And this was Salman al-Farsi radiallahu anhu, a Persian, and Persians were known for fighting a more well-organized army and also fighting a bigger army. So the Romans worked on good battle tactics. They had big armies, big battalions, and they would use the number to strategize and defeat the enemy. Whereas the Persians were pretty rough and raw fighters. And they pretty much worked on their courage and bravery. And they were big chaps. So they would go up against a bigger enemy. But in order to level the field, what they would do is they would try to bottle the army, the enemy army, so that they did not face the large army. What they would do is they would force the army, constrict the army, so the battlefront would only be 15, 20, 25 man strong. Now they could deal with that 15, 20 man strong. Had they not constricted a larger army, then the army would completely surround them. When it would be completely surrounded, it would only be a matter of time. They would be getting attacked from the back. They would be getting attacked from the side. They'd be getting attacked from the other side, from the front. There'll be arrows flying over. It'll be a matter of time because it's just a numbers game. But when you eliminate the numbers and you have 15, 20 men at your front line and they have 15, 20 men on their front line, then it's equal. 20 men against 20 men. And because these Persians were stronger and braver and had more courage, they tend to overcome a bigger army. So he suggested, he said, "Oh, Messenger of Allah, why don't we dig a trench here and reduce the impact of the army?" But that's a separate story. The only reason I mention it to you is that on certain matters that weren't religious, weren't matters of the deen, the Prophet ﷺ listened to the advice of others. But when it came to matters of deen, then there is no listening to advice because this is scripture. It had to be done in the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted it to be done. It could not be done in any other way. So, in that regard, I'm trying to remember why I went to this story of the Prophet ﷺ's words. I'm trying to remember the question now. Goodness me, I went so far into that story. The question just slipped my mind. I'm sure Adil will put that question back up again now because old age or something, isn't it, creeping up on me? No, he's not putting the question up now, is he? No, he is. Oh, he is. Here it comes. Yes. Can you say Bismillah in bathroom when taking off clothes? That was the question. So you might be thinking, how did we end up with the Battle of Khandak from there? But hey, that's where we ended up. So to say certain things and to do certain things of the unseen requires the Prophet ﷺ's endorsement. Okay. So did the Prophet ﷺ ever say Bismillah when removing clothes? There's no evidence of it that I have come across. Did he ever start a job and say Bismillah? Yes. Whenever he started a good task, he would say Bismillah. Is taking clothes off a good task? Well, it's not a bad thing. It's not evil. It's not wrong, especially if a person is saying it in order to do ghusl or something like that. So there will be no harm if a person said Bismillah because they're clothed, aren't they? They're just starting to take their clothes off. Bismillah. Okay, starting in the name of Allah. So there would be no harm if a person did that based on that narration that any act, any deed that you are performing, you should say the name of Allah in order to put barakah, in that particular act. So we do have another question that's come through via the email on q&a@iqra.tv. I'm not going to take that question yet. It is about something called Halloween, which I'm sure your children are probably talking to you about it. Which I'm sure your children are talking about it to you. I know it's been half term here in Bradford, not sure what it's like across the country, but we're just coming out of half term, and I know Adil's going to jump in and say, yep, it's still half term for others. Yes, I know. For some schools, obviously, they're getting 2 weeks because they started a week earlier, and therefore they will be off next week as well. But for the majority of us, for the normal people, Adil, whose kids go to school, they will be back at school on Monday, which is the 31st of October. And as I understand it correctly, 31st of October is also Halloween, if I'm not mistaken. And then we have the 5th of November, which is surprisingly 5 days after the 31st of October, which is a day in which people let off fireworks and burn. You know, the world is changing. When November the 5th used to come back in the day when I was a kid, that was an excuse to get all your rubbish out of your house and burn it, and the council won't say out to you. Or is that still the way people do things? That's what we used to do, is that, Mum and Dad used to store things in the basement throughout the whole year. And then when it was bonfire night, we would drag it out into the middle of our street in Hanover Square. We had a middle bit, and we used to end up building a huge bonfire. But it was all everybody's kachra and everybody's wood and things that would burn, obviously. And then on bonfire day, night even, then people would spark it and burn. And that meant you didn't have to, hire a skip. You didn't need to take it down to the local dump, trade waste, or the normal waste place that you would go to, and your problem solved. So we're going to talk about that, inshallah, after the break, because we've got, several seconds left now before we disappear. We haven't had our first call of the evening. That's a bit sad. We hope that we will get our first call after our break, so please do ring in. It's the last one of the week. Obviously, it's Friday, and it's the last session of Friday. So after that, you won't see me. You won't have an opportunity to ask questions till Wednesday because our colleague, Mona Fazal Dasab, is also not in on Monday. So, hey, why not take this opportunity and call the number? I will share the number with you when we return after the short interval for the adhan in London. Remember, all the adhans are for London. See you soon.